Hey everyone, welcome to the channel. It's been a little while since I posted a video, but I've still been going to see movies, usually like once or twice a week. I just haven't quite had the bandwidth to continue to make reviews very much lately, but I'm hoping moving forward that I will, but we'll just take it kind of one movie at a time. So today's movie is Venom the Last Dance. I just got back from seeing it at the theater. And yeah, just wanted to share my thoughts, even though I wish it was a better film to kind of get back into the swing of things, hopefully with reviews. Although we've got a few this weekend, so I think I'm still hopeful that the weekend as a whole will have some good movies. But my yeah, my non-spoiler kind of review of the film is that it was just okay. It was kind of meh. Overall, it's a letter grade of a C for me, which means that I wouldn't recommend it, but I also wouldn't dissuade you from going if you wanted to go. But it was, yeah, it was a watchable film, but kind of felt a little bit like a waste of time for me, given that there's, so much other stuff to watch these days. But now I'm gonna go into like my full thoughts, which may include spoilers and stuff like that. So if you don't want to know anything beyond kind of what my letter grade is and general recommendation, feel free to come back to this later. But otherwise, yeah, spoilers are fair game as we kind of dig into a little bit more why it was just a C for me at the end of the day. So I've been, for some context, I think I've only seen the second Venom once, and that was in theaters like, what was it, 3 years ago now when it came out? Is that 2020 or 2021? I think it was 2021 when it came out. But that as well, I think I gave a C. Like it was fine. I I believe I gave the first one a B. Like that was a good film. I enjoyed it, but I've only seen that I think a couple of times now too. So I'm not like I'm aware that some of my critique and my experience of this film is perhaps due to a lack of familiarity with the previous two, perhaps. Mainly in that I feel like they kind of contradicted several things that were well established, especially in the first one. And kind of given that and given that it didn't do a whole lot otherwise, those were just like constantly on my mind throughout the film, which lessened my enjoyment of it. So I feel like in the first one they made a very big deal about how unique it is for the symbiotes to find compatible hosts. And like that's why Eddie's such a big deal, and Venom, because they actually work together. And that concept is just absent from this film. In this film, the symbiotes can just link and bond with any human and then disbond without any sort of side effect, and they can immediately be in sync and like compatible. And I, yeah, I don't. I was just confused because it felt like that was very different from what they've established in these films. And again, that's fine. Like, okay, maybe we're just going in that direction, but it didn't necessarily add anything to the film. If anything, it just made it feel a little bit more generic because it enabled them to do more generic things. Like the final battle was just like, oh, sorry about that, get everybody involved, and we're gonna have a bunch of kind of Venom variants of a bunch of different people going after this monster. So that was one thing that I didn't, yeah, that was kind of constantly on my mind. And then um another one that I felt was kind of a contradiction that, yeah, again, it was just hard for my brain to not be thinking about that, which again lessened my experience. Was that in the first one, it's very clearly established that Venom is like the runt of the litter in his world, and that's not to say that he's like there aren't other like very capable symbiotes. He's not clearly the runt of the ones that are involved in this movie, and there's a lot of them. There's like six or seven, I want to say, and so that was interesting, I think. Um, and they also seemed a lot more like goodwilling towards humans than they were presented to be in the first film and the second one. But granted, we haven't had that big of a sample size from the collective of symbiotes. But yeah, I think both of those just seemed different from how things have been in the other movies in the trilogy. But it's not like a super like connected trilogy, so I think it's fine if they want to take some liberties and change things. It just in my mind it didn't add anything to the film. And then other things that I think keep me from enjoying these movies more is I don't feel as in love with the character of Eddie and Venom. I mean I think Venom is amusing, but I don't like love them as a character. And I think I think if you have that, I think it will be an enjoyable film. And you'll enjoy spending time with them. But I don't already love the characters, and the movie doesn't really dig into characters like kind of at all. That was I think like for the movie, it's basically just a popcorn flick. It's like a Transformers movie. There's like no character development. The characters aren't all that interesting. They seem like things that we've already seen before. And right now, that just is not what resonates with me and what I appreciate when I go see a movie. I do think like the design was of the film, like your costumes and kind of the set locations and things like that. Like it was cool to see Eddie and Venom in Vegas. Like that was cool. Well, you know, maybe not the most likely thing, but like Mrs. Chen, who like her sort of cameo in Vegas was that was fun and things like that. But I think for like the artistry that does go into it, it's it's unfortunate that like the story and the script weren't better in my opinion. Like you have basically a nameless and faceless villain sending these sort of Stranger Things type monsters, but like only like one at a time. It took them long enough to send more that are basically like invincible until they're not. I guess nuclear acid or radioactive acid or whatever that was. Nuclear radiation. Yeah, I don't. The they were invincible until we needed the movie to be over, and then Venom just kind of figured out how to kill him. But I guess maybe he knew how to do that all along and just didn't want to die until the end. Um, but yeah, I don't know. I think it's supposed to be an examination of like their friendship, but even that I feel like was it felt like it was more in like the flashbacks that they did at the end than like the whole movie. Kind of to get you like in those feels of friends saying goodbye. But I did think like the family, while like in and of itself was very generic, like oh we have a kind of catastrophic sort of movie. It's not really end of the world type movie, but it feels very much that way. So we're gonna have a family that we follow through the movie and give us something to care about. So like doing that in and of itself is I think fairly generic, but they do it in a pretty good way. Like I think they did a good enough job of the family where I didn't completely not care about them. But I do also think it's interesting their casting choices to have basically. I mean, I think Venom kind of exists in its own universe. I know they've sort of, in a post-credit scene, brought him into the MCU briefly, and like that's where we pick up the film. But I don't think they've ever. Well, I mean, yeah, I don't know that they've actually confirmed, what version of Spider-Man is in this world. I think my guess is some version of Tom Holland because he recognizes him on the TV, but maybe he only recognized him on the TV in that post-credit scene because he was Spider-Man. But I think it's interesting to have like in this version of the universe what looks like Dr. Connors from the Andrew Garfield version of the Spider-Man universe is just a, dad with, two kids and a partner and they just, drive around the US looking for aliens. Like that was kind of amusing. And then in this version of the multiverse, you've got Mordo, who's just, I think general in the US Army and things like that. So those were like a little distracting, but also like fine. Obviously, it's not super connected at this point, even though yeah, I don't know. It's kind of amusing, I think, thinking of those things. But yeah, I think the my favorite character was I don't know her name, but it wasn't like the main scientist. It was like the second main scientist, and felt like she had the most. I don't know. I was like most interested in her character throughout it. I think the main scientist, I didn't really get her motivations for being like as against the army and as into like the aliens are here and they're good and we need to help them. Um, I didn't really fully understand her story. I know it was about her brother and realizing her brother's dream, but they kind of like told us that. I didn't feel like I don't know. They didn't do enough for me to buy into that. But yeah, the other one I think felt like a more real character, I guess, or maybe just more relatable to me, and that's why I found her more interesting. I don't know. But yeah, I don't I feel like almost all the characters though just seemed fairly generic with, enough to make them not completely like copy and paste of other characters, but like the main general dude who's, fully like, oh, these things are the enemy, we got to do what we got to do, and then by the end he like comes around to everyone else's point of view. I mean, I think it's a discussion to be had. I think the movie didn't really have it. It touched on it, but I think it would have been interesting had they like his stance, which wasn't really focused on, was let's kill Eddie because he's one person, and once we kill Eddie, the Codex is gone. And that's not. I think that's not necessarily I'm not saying like you should just go kill somebody, but I think that's a discussion that should have been had with Eddie to be like, "Hey, here's where we're at. These things are killing people. Um, you know, as we understand it right now, either you or Venom have to die." And I think it's probably easier to kill Eddie over Venom. And yeah, I don't know. I feel like that would have been an interesting conversation to have to be like, "Hey, Eddie, do you want to sacrifice yourself to make these things go away?" And he's kind of like forced to. Like, I think they just avoid that question for way too long, and a lot of people get hurt in the meantime. But I guess he's not like Venom isn't a hero. He's an anti-hero, and yeah, I don't know, but, like, the movie just kinda does that and also doesn't focus on that, like, technically kind of the most of the movie, Venom and Eddie are making selfish decisions until they're not. But, I don't know, I think all these things are just kinda me being overly critical because I was just kinda bored by the movie. The action was good enough, it wasn't bad, but it wasn't I don't know, it didn't feel all that, like, interesting or engaging. And then yeah, the characters were just fine. But yeah, I don't know. I'd love to hear your thoughts on the movie though. Hopefully you have a better time with it or had a better time with it than I did. But yeah, I don't know. I think if this was like the first time you're seeing a movie of this type of movie, it would be a lot more engaging. But I feel like I've just seen a lot of these at this point, and they lose interest for me. So yeah, that's kind of my thoughts on Venom: The Last Dance. And yeah, if you've had a chance to see it, I'd love to hear your thoughts down below. And with that, we will catch you in the next video.